My name is Alexis Chin, and I am 26 years old. The day I walked into that courtroom, my parents actually rolled their eyes at me. They thought I was being dramatic, playing the victim again like I always did according to them. But when the judge read my credentials aloud and asked me to approach the bench, their faces went white. They had no idea who I had become in the 8 years since I left home. If you have ever been underestimated by your own family, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button because this story about transformation and justice might just change how you see your own potential. Growing up as the youngest of 3 children in the Chin household meant living in someone else's shadow. My parents, David and Michelle Chin, immigrated from Taiwan in the early 1990s and built a successful medical practice together. Dad was a cardiologist and Mom was a dermatologist. They had worked incredibly hard to achieve the American dream, and they expected nothing less than perfection from their children. My older brother Marcus, now 32, was the golden child. He followed in Dad's footsteps, attending Johns Hopkins for his undergraduate degree and then Harvard Medical School. He specialized in neurosurgery and married another doctor. Everything about Marcus screamed success in my parents' eyes. My sister Valerie, 29, took after Mom. She went to Columbia for dermatology and opened her own practice in Manhattan. She married a successful investment banker and lived in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Another perfect success story that my parents loved to brag about at every family gathering. Then there was me. From the time I was young, I knew I was different. While Marcus studied anatomy and Valerie memorized skin conditions, I was fascinated by the law. I watched courtroom dramas, read about famous legal cases, and dreamed of becoming a lawyer. But in the Chin household, there was only one acceptable career path: medicine. When I was 14, I made the mistake of telling my parents about my dreams during a family dinner. The reaction was immediate and devastating. A lawyer, my father scoffed, setting down his chopsticks with a disapproving clatter. You want to be a lawyer? Do you know how many lawyers there are? It is a saturated field with no prestige. But Dad, I protested, I am good at debate. My teacher says I have a natural talent for argumentation. My mother laughed, actually laughed. Alexis, you can barely maintain AB average in your science classes. How do you expect to get into a good law school when you cannot even excel at basic biology? I get A's in English, history, and government, I pointed out. Maybe I am just not meant to be a doctor. The table went silent. Marcus and Valerie exchanged uncomfortable glances. My father's face turned red. Not meant to be a doctor, he repeated slowly. Let me tell you something, Alexis. Your mother, and I did not sacrifice everything, work 80-hour weeks, struggle to build our practice so that you could waste your potential on a career that any mediocre student can pursue. You will be a doctor. End of discussion. That conversation set the tone for the next 4 years of my life. My parents enrolled me in extra science tutoring, forced me to shadow doctors at their hospital, and constantly compared me to my siblings. Every parent-teacher conference, every report card, every family gathering became an opportunity to remind me of my shortcomings. When college application time came, I applied to pre-med programs at my parents' insistence. But I also secretly applied to several universities with strong pre-law programs. When I got accepted to both Northwestern's pre-med program and their undergraduate program with a focus on political science, I made a choice that would change my life forever. I chose political science. The day I told my parents was one of the worst of my life. We were sitting in the living room of our suburban Chicago home. I had practiced my speech for weeks, anticipating their objections. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something, I began, my hands trembling. I have decided not to do pre-med. I am going to study political science and then go to law school. The explosion was immediate. My father stood up so fast he knocked over his coffee table. You are making the biggest mistake of your life, he shouted. Do you have any idea how competitive law is? How little money you will make compared to a doctor? You are throwing away your future. It is my future, I said quietly. Not yours. If you make this choice, my mother said coldly, do not expect us to pay for it. We will pay for medical school. That is it. If you want to waste your life as a lawyer, you can do it on your own dime. Fine, I heard myself say, shocked at my own courage. I will. And that was how, at 18 years old, I found myself completely financially cut off from my family. My parents refused to fill out the FAFSA forms, claiming they would not support my foolish decision. They told extended family I was being rebellious and ungrateful. Marcus and Valerie were instructed not to help me financially. The next 8 years were the hardest and most transformative of my life. I worked 3 jobs while attending Northwestern, sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, and living in a tiny studio apartment I shared with 2 roommates. I waited tables at a diner, worked overnight shifts at a convenience store, and did freelance tutoring. Despite the exhaustion, I excelled. I maintained a 3.9 GPA, made the dean's list every semester, and graduated summa cum laude. During this time, I had minimal contact with my family. They would call occasionally, usually to ask when I was going to come to my senses and apply to medical school. When I got accepted to Yale Law School with a partial scholarship, I called my parents to share the news. My mother's response was, "Yale? Well, I suppose it is better than a 4th-tier school. Call us when you have a real accomplishment to share." Law school was even harder than undergrad. I continued working, took out loans, and pushed myself to the absolute limit. But I was driven by something deeper than just ambition. I wanted to prove to myself and to my family that I had made the right choice. During my 2nd year, I interned at the public defender's office. That experience changed everything. I worked with people who had no voice, no resources, no advocates. I saw how the legal system could crush the vulnerable and protect the powerful. And I found my calling. I decided to specialize in family law, specifically cases involving children's rights and parental abuse and neglect. The irony was not lost on me that I was dedicating my career to protecting children from harmful family dynamics. After graduating in the top 10% of my class, I clerked for a federal judge for 2 years, then joined a nonprofit legal organization that provided free legal services to low-income families. The pay was terrible compared to what I could have made at a corporate firm, but the work was meaningful. My parents were predictably disappointed. "You went to Yale Law School to make $55,000 a year," my father said when I told him. "Your brother makes that in a week." By the time I was 25, I had become one of the leading voices in family law in Illinois. I had won several high-profile cases, published articles in law journals, and frequently spoke at conferences. But my family had no idea. We spoke maybe twice a year, brief, awkward phone calls where they asked when I was going to get serious about my career. The case that would bring me face-to-face with my parents in court began on a cold morning in February. I received a call from Child Protective Services about a 16-year-old girl named Emma. Her parents, both successful professionals, had been controlling every aspect of her life to the point of psychological abuse. When she expressed interest in pursuing art instead of the career they had chosen for her, they became emotionally abusive, threatening, and punitive. As I read through the case file, I felt like I was reading my own story. The dismissal of her interests, the constant comparisons to siblings, the financial threats, the emotional manipulation. It was all too familiar. Emma had finally reached out to a school counselor after her parents destroyed her art portfolio and told her she was worthless. CPS had opened an investigation, and Emma was requesting legal emancipation from her parents. The case went to family court, and I was assigned as Emma's attorney. What I did not know until I walked into that courtroom was that Emma's parents had hired my brother Marcus as their character witness. They wanted a respected doctor to testify about the importance of parental authority in guiding children toward successful careers. And even more shocking, my parents were in the courtroom to support them. According to the case notes, they were friends of Emma's parents through their medical network. They believed Emma was being ungrateful and manipulative, just like, as my mother had apparently told them, their own youngest daughter had been. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit, gathered my files, and drove to the courthouse. I was nervous, not because of the case, but because I knew there was a chance my family might be there. I had not seen them in person in over a year. When I walked into the courtroom, I spotted them immediately. My parents were sitting in the gallery behind Emma's parents. Marcus was sitting at the defendant's table in his expensive suit, ready to testify. My sister Valerie was there too, probably for moral support. The moment I walked through the doors, my mother saw me. I watched as she elbowed my father and whispered something. They both looked at me and, in perfect synchronization, rolled their eyes. I saw my mother mouth something to the woman next to her, Emma's mother. Though I could not hear it, I could read her lips. That is our daughter. She is always so dramatic. I felt the old familiar shame trying to creep up my spine. But then I remembered who I was now. I was not the insecure 18-year-old they had dismissed. I was an accomplished attorney about to fight for a child who deserved better than what her parents were giving her. I walked to the plaintiff's table where Emma was sitting with her temporary guardian. She looked small and scared, exactly how I had felt so many times in my parents' presence. "Are you my lawyer?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said, setting down my briefcase and giving her a reassuring smile. "My name is Alexis Chin, and I am going to fight for you." Behind me, I heard a commotion. Then my father's voice, sharp with disbelief. "Chen? Alexis Chin? That is impossible." The bailiff called for order, and everyone took their seats. Judge Morrison entered, an older woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. I had appeared before her several times and knew she was fair but tough. "Good morning," Judge Morrison said, settling into her chair and reviewing the case file. "We're here for the petition of emancipation filed by Emma Rodriguez, minor, age 16. Attorney Chin, you are representing the petitioner." "Yes, Your Honor," I stood and responded. Judge Morrison looked up from her papers and smiled. "It is good to see you again, Miss Chen." For those not familiar, Ms. Chen clerked for Judge Patterson in the Northern District and has an exceptional record in family law. She has won precedent-setting cases regarding children's rights and has been recognized by the American Bar Association for her advocacy work. The courtroom went silent. I could feel my family stares boring into my back. "Before we begin," Judge Morrison continued, "I want to note for the record that Ms. Chin graduated from Yale Law School and has successfully represented over 200 families in cases similar to this one. Her expertise in parental abuse cases, particularly those involving emotional and psychological coercion, is well established." I kept my face professional, but inside, I felt a surge of vindication. This was what I had become while they had dismissed me as a failure. "Miss Chin, you may present your opening statement." I stood and approached the bench, very aware that my entire family was watching. When I spoke, my voice was clear and confident, the voice of someone who had found her calling. "Your Honor, this case is about a child's right to self-determination and protection from psychological abuse disguised as parental guidance. Emma Rodriguez is not a rebellious teenager. She is a talented artist with a 4.0 GPA who has been subjected to sustained emotional abuse because her career aspirations do not align with her parents' expectations. Over the next hour, I methodically laid out the case. I presented evidence of the parents' behavior, recorded conversations where they called Emma worthless, text messages where they threatened to disown her, testimony from teachers and counselors about the change in Emma's mental health. When it was time to cross-examine Marcus, I felt a strange sense of calm. He took the stand in his expensive suit, confident and composed as always. "Dr. Chin," I began, "you are here to testify about the importance of parental guidance in career choices, is that correct?" "Yes," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "As a neurosurgeon, I understand the importance of rigorous academic preparation. Parents need to guide their children towards stable, respectable careers." "I see. And what happens when a child has different talents or interests than what the parents envision?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Well, parents usually know best. They have life experience that children lack. So, in your opinion, should a child with exceptional artistic talent be forced to pursue medicine if that is what the parents want?" "I would not say forced," Marcus hedged, "but strongly encouraged, yes. Even if it causes psychological harm? Even if it destroys the child's self-esteem and sense of identity?" "Objection," the opposing counsel interjected. "Argumentative." "Sustained," Judge Morrison said. Rephrase, Miss Chen. Dr. Chen, are you familiar with the psychological research on parental coercion and its long-term effects on children? I am a neurosurgeon, not a psychiatrist, Marcus said stiffly. But you're offering expert testimony on parenting practices, I pointed out. So let me ask you this. Do you believe that destroying a child's artwork, calling them worthless, and threatening financial abandonment are appropriate forms of parental guidance? Marcus's face reddened. Those are extreme characterizations. Are they? Because those are the exact actions Emma's parents took, the same parents you are here defending. I paused, letting that sink in. Dr. Chen, did your parents ever use similar tactics with you or your siblings? Objection. The opposing counsel was on his feet. Relevance. I turned to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, the witness is testifying about normal parental guidance. I am establishing whether his understanding of normal is actually healthy. I will allow it, Judge Morrison said. Answer the question, Dr. Chen. Marcus looked extremely uncomfortable. My parents had high expectations, but that is different. Is it? Did they ever tell you that you had to become a doctor? They encouraged medicine, yes. And if you had wanted to pursue something else, would they have supported you? Marcus was silent for a long moment. I do not know. I always wanted to be a doctor. How convenient, I said quietly. No further questions. As Marcus stepped down, I saw him glance at our parents in the gallery. They looked shaken. The turning point came when I put Emma on the stand. She was nervous, but her testimony was powerful. She described the constant criticism, the destruction of her artwork, the way her parents made her feel worthless unless she pursued their vision for her life. I love my parents, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. But I feel like I am drowning. Like I am not allowed to be myself. Every day I wake up feeling like a disappointment because I am not who they want me to be. When Emma's mother took the stand to defend herself, I approached with a calmness born from years of similar experiences. Mrs. Rodriguez, you stated in your deposition that you destroyed Emma's art portfolio because you wanted to help her focus on her studies. Is that correct? Yes, she said defensively. She was spending too much time on a hobby when she should have been preparing for medical school applications. Emma is 16. She has not even graduated high school. Why are you already planning her career? Because that is what good parents do. We guide our children toward success. And who decides what success looks like? You or Emma? We are her parents. We know what is best. I picked up a folder from my table. Mrs. Rodriguez, I would like to submit Emma's academic record into evidence. She has a 4.0 GPA, has won multiple art competitions, and has been offered preliminary acceptance to 3 prestigious art schools. By any objective measure, she is successful. So why is that not good enough? Mrs. Rodriguez's facade cracked. Because art is not a real career. She will struggle financially. She will never be respected. She will waste her potential. Or, I said quietly, she will be happy. She will pursue her passion. She will live her own life instead of the life you have chosen for her. The courtroom was silent. I turned to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, this case represents a fundamental question. Do parents own their children's futures, or are children entitled to self-determination? Emma is not asking to drop out of school or engage in destructive behavior. She is asking for the freedom to pursue her own dreams, to develop her own talents, to become her own person. The emotional abuse she has endured is real and documented. She deserves protection. Judge Morrison took a brief recess to review all the evidence and testimony. When we returned, the atmosphere in the courtroom was tense. I have reviewed all the evidence presented today, Judge Morrison began. This court recognizes that parents naturally want the best for their children. However, parental authority is not absolute, and it does not include the right to psychologically abuse a child or destroy their sense of self. I felt Emma squeeze my hand under the table. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of emotional abuse disguised as parental guidance, the judge continued. Ms. Chin has effectively demonstrated that Emma's mental health has deteriorated under her parents' control, and that their actions go far beyond reasonable parenting. Judge Morrison looked directly at Emma's parents. Your daughter is a gifted young woman with exceptional talent. Instead of nurturing that talent, you have tried to crush it. Instead of supporting her, you have torn her down. This court cannot and will not allow that to continue. Therefore, I am granting Emma's petition for emancipation, effective immediately. Additionally, I am ordering both parents to complete parenting classes and family therapy before any visitation can be considered. Emma burst into tears, collapsing against me. I held her as she sobbed with relief. After the judge left, I gathered my things and prepared to leave. That was when my parents approached me. They looked older, somehow diminished. "Alexis," my father said. "We need to talk." "About what?" I asked, my tone professional and distant. "We had no idea you had become so accomplished," my mother said. Her voice was small, uncertain in a way I had never heard before. "Yale Law School? All. Those cases you have won? Why did you never tell us?" I looked at her in disbelief. "I did tell you, Mom. Multiple times. You just never listened. You were too busy being disappointed that I was not a doctor. We thought we were helping you," my father said. "We thought we were pushing you toward a better life." "No," I corrected him. "You were pushing me toward the life you wanted, not the life I wanted. Just like Emma's parents did to her. You saw yourself in them, did you not? That is why you supported them. Because accepting that what they did was wrong would mean accepting that what you did to me was wrong." Marcus stepped forward. "Alexis, I am sorry. I had no idea that was you until the judge said your name. If I had known you were opposing counsel..." "What?" "You would have withdrawn." I shook my head. "No, Marcus. You testified honestly about what you believe. The problem is not that you testified. The problem is that our parents raised us to believe that their dreams for us were more important than our own dreams for ourselves." Valerie had tears in her eyes. "I never realized how much they hurt you. I thought you were just being stubborn." "I was being myself," I said. "And that was never good enough for them." I turned back to my parents. "For 8 years, I have been building a career, helping people, making a difference. I have won cases that changed laws, protected vulnerable children, given voice to the voiceless. And you never once asked about my work or my life. You just assumed I was failing because I did not become what you wanted me to be." "We are proud of you," my mother said, reaching for my hand. "We see that now." I pulled away gently. "Are you proud of me? Or are you just impressed by the credentials the judge read out? Because there is a difference." The question hung in the air, unanswered. "I need to go," I said, picking up my briefcase. "Emma needs help transitioning to independent living, and I have another case starting tomorrow." As I walked toward the door, my father called out, "Will we see you again? Can we try to fix this?" I paused and turned back to look at them. "I do not know, Dad. That depends on whether you are capable of accepting who I actually am instead of mourning who you wanted me to be." That was 6 months ago. Since then, my relationship with my family has been slowly, carefully evolving. We started with family therapy, all 5 of us together. It has been painful, with many tears and difficult revelations. My parents have had to confront their favoritism, their controlling behavior, their inability to see their children as individuals rather than extensions of themselves. Marcus and Valerie have both apologized, and we have been rebuilding our sibling relationships. Marcus even recently asked me to help him understand why his teenage son has been resisting following in his footsteps into medicine. It is progress, slow but real. My parents have attended some of my court cases now. They sit in the gallery and watch me work, finally seeing what I have become. After one particularly difficult case where I secured protection for 3 siblings being abused by their parents, my mother waited for me in the hallway. "You are extraordinary at what you do," she said quietly. "I am sorry it took me so long to see it. It was not a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. The most meaningful outcome, however, has been my relationship with Emma. She is thriving now, living in a supervised independent living facility for emancipated teens, attending high school, and creating incredible art. She was recently accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design with a full scholarship. Last week, she stopped by my office with a wrapped package. "I wanted you to have this," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a painting. It showed a courtroom with a young girl sitting at a table and a woman in a suit standing before a judge. The light in the painting came from a window behind the judge, streaming down on both the girl and the lawyer, illuminating them. "It is called justice," Emma explained. "That is what you gave me. Not just legal justice, but the ability to believe that my dreams matter, that my voice deserves to be heard." I hung the painting in my office, directly across from my desk. It reminds me every day why I chose this path, why I endured those years of struggle and rejection. My story is not unique. Countless young people are pushed toward careers they never wanted, dismissed when they express different dreams, made to feel like failures for being themselves. I was lucky. I had the stubbornness to resist, the resilience to survive, and eventually the education to advocate not just for myself, but for others. Today, I am 26 years old. I am an attorney with a thriving practice in family law, specializing in children's rights. I have argued before state Supreme Courts, published extensively, and mentored dozens of young lawyers. I have helped hundreds of children find their voices and their freedom. And yes, I finally have my parents' respect. But more importantly, I have my own. The day I walked into that courtroom and my parents rolled their eyes at me, they saw who they thought I was, their disappointing youngest child who had thrown away her potential. What they did not see was who I had become, someone who had taken their rejection and transmuted it into purpose, someone who used their own experience of being dismissed to ensure other children would be heard. The judge was stunned not because I had credentials or accomplishments, though those helped. She was stunned because she saw something my parents had missed for 8 years, that sometimes the child who does not fit the mold is not broken. Sometimes they are just meant for a different purpose, a purpose that might be more meaningful than the one their parents envisioned. If you are watching this and you are struggling against family expectations, against pressure to be someone you are not, I want you to know this. Your dreams are valid. Your interests matter. Your vision for your life is just as important as anyone else's vision for you. The path I chose was hard. I would not minimize that. There were nights I survived on ramen noodles and 3 hours of sleep. There were moments I doubted myself and wondered if my parents were right. But looking back now, I would make the same choice again. Because living your truth, even when it is difficult, is better than living someone else's lie, even when it is comfortable. My relationship with my parents is still healing, still complicated. I do not know if we will ever have the close, warm family dynamic I once wanted. But I have something better. I have their respect, earned not by meeting their expectations, but by exceeding my own. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that every time I walk into a courtroom, every time I advocate for a child who is not being heard, I am doing exactly what I was meant to do. Not despite my parents' rejection, but in some ways, because of it. Have you ever been underestimated or dismissed by your family? How did you find the courage to pursue your own path? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share this video with anyone who might be struggling to be themselves in the face of family pressure. And remember, the people who are supposed to know you best sometimes know you least. Do not let their blindness dim your light. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to become who you are meant to be, regardless of who others expect you to be.